Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube Just Daf It. Today we're doing Nazir Daf Yud Aleph, number 11. Great share for you today. Fridays are always a rush, not easy. Let's get started. Let's fix the camera for a second. All right, let's get started. The Mishnah on the top of Yud Aleph and Aleph. Mazgulo Sakos, so I'm already Nazir Mimenu, pouring him a cup of wine. I'm a Nazir from this cup of wine. Or is a Nazir? He meant to take a Nazir upon himself. And he's a complete Nazir. There was an incident with a woman, Shahaisa Shikura. She went to the bar, she was drunk. Umazgula Sakos, they poured her a glass of wine. Amra Haredi Nazir Nazira from it. Amra Kam Loniskab Nazua Loma Hareo like Carbon. She didn't actually take a Nazir upon herself. She just meant to forbid B'Torah's Neder, right? To forbid that cup of wine upon herself. She does not become a complete Nazir. The Gemara says about Nazir. The Gemara says, Ma'isa Listor. The story in the end of the Mishnah seems to contradict the ruling of the beginning of the Mishnah. Amart Reisha is a Nazir. It says that in this incident where they're pouring someone wine, he's a Nazir. He says he's a Nazir from this cup. Other Tani, Ma'isa Bishachas, Alma Bahai Yehuda Aser, Hayenach Shari. Only that cup she asked her. But another cup, if they would bring over mutter. The Gemara says, indeed, we're missing part of the Mishnah. Really, it's read as follows: Mazgula is a kos, so I'm already Nazir from it, or is a Nazir, like the Reisha says. Right? They pour him a cup, and he says, "I'm a Nazir from it." You are a Nazir. Vim shikaru, if he's drunk, I'm already Nazir from it. Ain't no Nazir. He's not a Nazir. My time, come on, I'm already like Korbanu. He's only answering a B'Torah's neder, comparing it to a Korban. Why should he say this? Well, he should be saying, right? How this cup of wine is like a Korban to me. The reason he said it, he supposedly said to say a Nazir, because he says a Nazir, they're not going to bother him and bring him more cups of wine. He's at a party, they want to get him drunk. It's Purim. So, by saying Nazir, they're not going to bring any more cups of wine. If he just says this cup is also to be B'Torah's net, they're going to bring another cup of wine. And it's going to be too hard for him because he's addicted to alcohol. So he just says he's a Nazir, in which case, they won't bring him anything at all. Hamil, so I'll say that's psikalahu, right, which is a complete abrogation from wine. And similarly, there was a story with a woman exactly the same way. Mishnah says already Nazir, I'm a Nazir on condition that 2/3 of my Nazir doesn't apply. I'll be drinking wine and I'll be going into burying people. I raised a Nazir. Nonetheless, he's a Nazir. But he's a complete Nazir. Not only is he can't shave his head, he can't cut his hair, he also can't drink wine, he can't be Metamal Mesa. Yodea initiation to zero. So if he says, I know that there's a concept of zero, so any day I should Nazir Asr B'Yayin. I thought a Nazir is only Asr to Metamal Mesa and to shave your head. I didn't know there's an Isser to drink wine. How is it Asr? He's Asr. The Chum says Asr. In all of them, he's a complete Nazir. We shouldn't matter. We shouldn't say he's not a Nazir at all. Right? This is based on the premise we have in Daf Gimel, Machlokas, and the Chum and Rabbi Shimon. Chum say, right? If you just taking the zeros even from one of them, I'm not going to be talking about the Mason, right? But Torah's Nazir, so it's complete Naziros. Even if you want to answer one of these, so you take all of them upon yourself. According to Rabbi Shimon, you have to say all three. So if he says only two out of the three, according to Rabbi Shimon, he's not a Nazir. I know the Nazir is forbidden to drink wine. I thought after I take the Naziros, I'll go to the Chacham and then they'll be matir, at least to me to drink wine. I'm an alcoholic. I need my wine. Or because that's my profession, my job. I work in a cemetery. I bury people. I raise a mutter. He's mutter according to the Rabbanah. Reb Shimon Ozer. This seems to contradict the previous statement, right over here. Right, he's saying, I think the yain doesn't apply. So, according to the Rabbanah, 2 out of 3 apply. It should be a complete Nazir. Because Shimon Aser, Shimon says the opposite. He's Aser. We'll talk about how you resolve this contradiction in the Gemara. Let's first talk about the first case in the Mishnah, right? I'm a Nazir on condition I'm not going to drink wine, right? So it's basically saying I'm going to be a Nazir just without wine. So I'm accepting 2 out of the 3 prohibitions by myself, not all. So why doesn't Rishon argue also in the Reisha? No one argues in the Reisha. Rishon should say, right? He shouldn't be a Nazir. The Rishon says you have to actually Yazir Mikulon. You have to take an adjust from them all 3 Yisurim at one time. Amar Rishon ben Levi, Chalakir Rishon ben Aparesha. Rishon does argue in the Resha, even though it's not mentioned in the Mishnah. Ravina Amar, doing a different answer. Resha lo poli Rishon. Rishon doesn't argue in the Resha. My time. Rishon the Havale Masna Mashkas Batar. A little different the way he phrased it. I'm a Nazir on condition that I'm going to be Shosei or Metamal Mason. Right? He's basically, I'm taking Naziris, and I'm making it Tanai, a stipulation, contingency, which is against the Torah. Right? Because the Torah says a Nazir is also in drinking wine and Metamal Mason. The general rule is, unless it's davar shava mammon, unless it's monetary issues, we assume that it's batal tonight. But the Nazir says, "Chal, Rishon ben Levi Amar Lacha." Rishon ben Levi, why didn't he give the answer of Ravina? Hi, almanas kechutz dami. Here, saying almanas is basically saying I'm a Nazir, right? Except for drinking wine, or except for b'tama l'mesim. So therefore, it's like, right? Like the second case in the Mishnah, where it's the Machlokes Rishon and the Rabbanan. We'll explain more in Iyad Ben Sion why Rishon ben Levi, even though it seems like clear Masna Mashakos in the Torah, why didn't he say it's like Masna Mashakos in the Torah? Why did he say over here it's Kechutz, right? Like the Gemara says in Meseches Ksuvos, right? Hamikudesh Yomenas She'en Alai Sher Ksus V'Ono. Why in that case didn't Rishon ben Levi say, oh, it's like he said Chutz, right? Tanya Kavasi Ravina, we had a brisa that supports Ravina's statement. Amar Harein Nazir Benashra E Shosi Yam Hamal Mesim. Harei Nazir, Asr Bakula. You're a complete Nazir. You're Asr in everything. Neshu Masa Mashkaz of Torah. Chol Masa Mashkaz of Torah. It's no batal. You take in the Naziris and you abrogate part of what the Torah says they're prohibited. You can't do that. So therefore, the Naziris is Chal, and you're Asr in all of these three Naziris. So the Nation Nazir Asr Yayin. The second case in the Mishnah, Amar Reisha Asr. Sorry, this is the third case. I know that wine is usher, but I think the Chachamim are going to matter, right, my isser of wine because I'm an alcoholic or I bury people. I'm at Reisha, meaning the second case in the Mishnah, usher Rav Shimon matir, right? According to the Rabbanan is usher Rav Shimon matir. It seems to be the opposite, right? The second case makes sense, right? The three cases in the Mishnah. The second case makes sense because Rav Shimon says you have to take all Yisurim upon yourself, and according to the Rabbanan, even one makes you a complete Nazir. So the Gemara says, "Emanami harei ze aser Rosh Hashanah matir." So the first answer the Gemara gives, let's flip it around, right? Even though it seems to say Rosh Hashanah aser, actually Rosh Hashanah is the one who's matir, and the Rabbanan are aser. Either way, same, a different answer. A little no seipach. Really, you don't have to flip it around. We'll keep the actual language of the way we have it in the Mishnah. Hasam, the top of Yud Aleph and Beis, Reisha Kagon the Nazir Michado the Rabbanan. The Amri Afilu Nazir El Ma'achsman harei ze Nazir. Right, the Reisha where he says, being the middle case of the Mishnah, what he says. I know this concept of Naziros, but I have no idea that wine is one of the Yisurim. So according to the Rabbanan, he's Aser. I feel even though he didn't know about wine, but he knew about Metamal Mesim. He knew about getting a haircut. So those two he accepted from himself. Once you accept even one of the Yisurim, you become a complete Nazir of Aser. According to Shimon, you have to know all of them. Seifa, the last case in the Mishnah, the Nazir Megulu, he really said, I'm a Nazir, I'm a complete Nazir. And he wants to, after he's becoming a Nazir, right? According to Rabbi Shimon, he took everything on himself. He's just saying, after going Nazir, I want to be Matir, one of the Isurim. The Rabbanan, the Amri, I feel the Nazir al-Ma'achas, man, having Nazir, right? One is like everything. So therefore, once he goes, he becomes a Nazir. But once he's Matir the Yayin, so it Maters the entire Nazirus. But Reb Shimon, the Amraj, Yazim Kulam, according to Reb Shimon, says that you have to answer all three upon yourself. Even if he's Matir the Yayin, right? It doesn't work. It doesn't work for anything because you have to Matir the entire thing. The third explanation. Right? Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan are arguing in the third case about Nidrei Onsin. The plugs of the Shmuel of Rav Asi, they're arguing in the Machlokes of Shmuel and Rav Asi the San. We had a Mishnah, the third parak of Zechas Nadarim. Arba Nadarim Yitirul Chamim. There are 4 Nadarim. This is what the parak talks. Third parak Nadarim talks about. The Chamim Matir. Nidrei Zeruzit. Nidrei Zeruzin is where you take a neder, right? You're making a business deal. I'm not going to sell it for such a price, and then you relent. Nidrei Havai, you make an exaggeration. Nidrei Shkagos. This is really what the case is talking. Our Mishnah. He had a misunderstanding. He didn't understand, right, that the Chum can't just be matir one of these surim. Nidrei onsen a nether where you were forced to make a nether of Amar, or make a nether and you couldn't come to someone's house because someone was sick in your family. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Asi, Arba Dvarim Halalo Srichin She'el. Rav Asi said about this mission in Sechas Darim, even though, right, Arba is doing Hitiru Chachamim, you have to go mat your nether. Can we the Shmuel? When I said it's in front of Shmuel, Amar Litana Kazani Hitiru Chachamim, the Chachamim matered it. But I'm a Srichin She'el, and you tell me, Rav Asi, that you need to matter the Darim, the Chachamim, right? So according to Shmuel, it's completely mutter. So our mission is talking about Nidre Shkagos, right? He thinks the Chachamim are going to matter the Yain. The Chachamim, Rabbanan Sabri, Rabbanan Sabri, Geshmuel, Rabbanan hold, right? The last case in our mission like Shmuel. They hold like Shmuel. You don't have to matter your nether. But Shimon holds like Ravasi. That still, nonetheless, even though he made a mistake, over here you have to go and matter the nether like Ravasi. The mission says, Harini Nazir, Valai Galeach Nazir. I am a Nazir, and also Valai is the second part of his statement. I'm also going to, right, at the end of your Nazir or someone else's Nazir, they have to bring karbanos, 3 karbanos, right? And the person has to shave, the Nazir has to shave his head, but those karbanos could be expensive. So I'm a Nazir, and I'm going to be Megaleach, I'm going to bring the karbanos for another Nazir. Vishama Chaver Shem heard him saying this. Amar Vani Valai Galeach Nazir. He repeated what he said. These people are smart, right? They each have an obligation to be a Nazir, and to pay for the karbanos of someone else. So if they're smart, right, pay for each other's karbanos. That means you only have to pay one set of karbanos because your friend will take care of your karbanos. They're not smart. And they have to pay for their own naziris, their karbanos, and pay for someone else's karbanos. Right? Instead of saying in our mission, he said va'ani va'alai l'galech nazir. He just said va'ani and me also and my. Mahu vani akuli dibura mashma. Really, the word ani is basically a repetition of what his friend said. His friend said, "I am a nazir, and I'm going to pay for someone else's naziros." And by saying ani, you're accepting both things upon yourself. Odilma pagi dibura mashma. He's only going on half of his statement. If you'll say maybe he's only going half of the statement, a ratio when he says vani, is that talking about he's accepting the naziros upon himself? Or is it on the second half of his statement that not that he's going to become a Nazir, but he's going to pay for someone else in the Naziris? It's a Kabbalah to pay for karbanos for somebody else. Tashma, let's try to answer this from our Mishnah. V'ani v'alai l'galech Nazir. The Kamar v'ani v'alai, right? There's a vav, v'ani v'alai, shamina v'ani apagi dibura. He adds v'ani, and then he doesn't say v'ani, right? He says v'ani v'alai, right? It's 2 parts to his statement. Right, so the fact that he has to say 2 parts to the statement, right, when he hears from his friend who says, "I'm a Nazir and I'm going to lay and I'm going to pay for someone else's Nazir," and says "Vani v'alai." If it really was just Vani, it includes everything. So you don't have to say "V'alai l'galei." Vani apagi dibura. So therefore, Ani is part of it. So the Gemara says, "Yeah, Amri in apagi dibura mashma mihu areish haseifa." So fine, the answer to the first question, but Vani is that going on to Makabal and Naziris, or is it maybe just not Makabal Naziris to pay for someone else's karbanos? So the Gemara says, Mina, we learn from the Mishnah, the Kamar v'alai l'galeach, right? The second half, v'alai l'galeach, shamina v'ani alt k'zibura mashma, right? The fact, the second half, he's saying explicitly that I'm going to pay for someone's karbanos. Obviously, Ani is going on the first part of the statement, that he wants to become a Nazir also. How do you know? Maybe Ani really goes on the entire statement, right? If he just were to say Ani, he's makabel and Naziros, and he's going to pay for someone else's karbanos. Mishum v'alai. Why did the Mishnah have to say another clause that he said v'alai l'galeach? My kamar v'alai. Why did he say v'alai? V'hamilsa. He's just reinforcing what he said. The first person said the ilotei mahachi. Right, that v'alai, he didn't have to say it. Ani would really be good enough to mechay himself in Naziros and to pay for someone else's karbanos. The reason he said v'alai is just to reinforce what he's saying. The first person was saying, and how do you know that's true? The ilo say mahachi. If you don't say this, it's only safe. We're gonna have a Mishnah on Daf It Beis tomorrow. I'm going to go half of a Nazir, half of the karbanos of a Nazir. I don't know, 3 karbanos. We'll have to talk about what is exactly half, 1.5 karbanos, 1 or 2. And his friend, Ramar Vani alai l'galei achatzi Nazir. Hasa mika tartan mili. There's only one Kabbalah to pay for someone's karbanos. Right? So the fact that he says ani and he says alai, so therefore you see that he's just reinforcing what he says. Elamai Kamar Alai, Baham Milsa. Why do you say Alai? He could have just said Vani, right? There's only one thing over there. His friend wasn't Makabal Nazir, it's just paying for someone's karbanos. So he also was saying like that. He wanted to pay for someone's karbanos. So he could have just done it without need. Why do you say Alai? He's just saying Baham Milsa. Hakanami Kamar Alai Baham Milsa. He's just reinforcing what he says. I'm only Rava. Rava said back to him, Haki Hashta. No, it makes sense. Yeah, must be Shlama Reisha, Sricha, Seifel, Sricha. If you'll tell me our Mishnah, right, he made two statements, Vani, Valai, Legaleach. And those were two Kabbalahs. Vani was to Makabal and Naziros. Alai Legaleach is to pay for the Karbanos. That makes sense because, right, to tell you the Chiddush of the first Mishnah, our Mishnah over here, Aleph on the base, is to tell me that it's not a reinforcement, it's actually two different Kabbalahs. If he just said Vani, it's only Makabal and Naziros, not to pay for the Karbanos. So therefore, and then we'd have symmetry in the next Mishnah, which talks about a similar case, we'd mention though, even though there's no Chiddush. Right, because the reinforcer statement is not a chiddush. Tani Seifat lo sricha mishum reisha lo sricha. Ali Amris reisha lo sricha. You're telling me the reisha just to reinforce. That's not really a chiddush. It's just reinforcing what the person says. By saying a lie, I'm just reinforcing what he says. Seifa lo sricha. Reisha lo sricha. Seifa lo sricha. Both of them are not necessary. Tani reisha lo sricha. Tani Seifat lo sricha. Would the Tana go out of his way to mention two halachas that are really basically you could have derived from your own logic, and they're not Kiddushim? No, it must be the first case in our Mishnah. Specifically, he says, Vani, Valai Legaleach, that Vani is only Makabal half the first statement, that he's going to be a Nazir. And Valai Legaleach is to pay for the Karbanos. That's the conclusion of today's shir. Stay tuned for Ian with Ben Sion when we talk about Masne al Masha Kasu Torah.